Good evening and welcome to our daily devotional reading. A special welcome to the members of our make-believe monastery. This is a good day to be part of a make-believe monastery, I think. Contrary to the advice that I've been given online, I think I'm just gonna celebrate the new moon in Pisces by taking a long, relaxing bath, partially inspired by Folly's email, or what do you call it? Not email, essay. I get it via email. You get it via email when you're subscribed to his Substack. And daydream. Just lie in the bath and daydream. I think that's a very Piscean way to celebrate the new moon. So I'm recording a little bit earlier. I hope you get some time to just immerse yourself in water and daydream today. That's always nice. That being said, we've got work to do. Let's listen to Plato. On these foundations, the argument stands firm, which you, Socrates, remember Socrates is pretending to be Protagoras defending his views. So Socrates is speaking to Socrates. On these foundations, the arguments stand firm, which you, Socrates, may, if you please, overthrow by an opposite argument. Or if you like, you may put questions to me, a method to which no intelligent person would object, quite the reverse. But I must beg you to put fair questions, for there is great inconsistency in saying that you have a zeal for virtue, and then always behaving unfairly in argument. The unfairness of which I complain is that you do not distinguish between mere disputation and dialectic. The disputer may trip up his opponents as often as he likes and make fun, but the dialectician will be in earnest and only correct his adversary when necessary, telling him the errors into which he has fallen through his own fault, or that of the company which he has previously kept. If you do so, your adversary will lay the blame of his own confusion and perplexity on himself and not on you. He will follow and love you and will hate himself and escape from himself into philosophy, in order that he may become different from what he was. But the other mode of arguing, which is practiced by the many, will have just the opposite effect upon him, and as he grows older, instead of turning philosopher, he will come to hate philosophy. I would recommend you, therefore, as I said before, not to encourage yourself in this polemical and controversial temper, but to find out, in a friendly and congenial spirit, what we really mean when we say that all things are in motion, and that to every individual and state what appears is. In this manner you will consider whether knowledge and sensation are the same or different. But you will not argue, as you were just now doing, from the customary use of names and words, which the vulgar perverts in all sorts of ways, causing infinite perplexity to one another. Such, Theodorus, is the very slight help which I am able to offer to our old friend. Had he been living, he would have helped himself in a far more glorious style. Theodorus, you are jesting, Socrates. Indeed, your defense of him has been most valorous. Theodorus, you are jesting, Socrates. Oh, I've read that. Socrates, thank you, friend, and I hope that you observed Protagoras bidding us to be serious. As the text, man is the measure of all things, was a solemn one, and he reproached us with making a boy the medium of discourse, and said that the boy's timidity was made to tell against his argument. He also declared that we made a joke of him. Theodorus, how could I fail to observe all that, Socrates? Socrates, well, and shall we do as he says? By all means. But if his wishes are to be regarded, you and I must take up the argument, and in all seriousness, and ask and answer one another, for you see that the rest of us are nothing but boys. In no other way can we escape the imputation that our fresh analysis of his thesis we are making fun with boys. Theodorus, well, but is not Theaetetus better able to follow a philosophical inquiry than a great many men who have long beards? Socrates, yes, Theodorus, but not better than you, and therefore please not to imagine that I am to defend by every means in my power your departed friend, and that you are to defend nothing and nobody. At any rate, my good man, do not sheer off until we know whether you are a true measure of diagrams, or whether all men are equally measures and sufficient for themselves in astronomy and geometry and the other branches of knowledge in which you are supposed to excel them. Theodorus, he who is sitting by you, Socrates, will not easily avoid being drawn into an argument. And when I said just now that you would excuse me, and not like the Lacedaemonians compel me to strip and fight, I was talking nonsense. I should rather compare you to Sciron, who threw travelers from the rocks. For the Lacedaemonians' rule is strip or depart. But you seem to go about your work more after the fashion of Antaeus. You will not allow anyone who approach you to depart until you have stripped him, and he has been compelled to try a fall with you in argument. Socrates. These are two famous bad men. Sciron, I read, was known for making people wash his feet, and then he would kick them from rocks, from like the cliffs. And Antaeus, which Theodorus says is more like Socrates, made people wrestle with him. And that usually ended badly for the other people. Socrates, there, Theodorus, you have hit off precisely the nature of my complaint. But I am even more pugnacious than the giants of old, for I have met with no end of heroes. Many a Hercules, many a Theseus, mighty in word, has broken my head. Nevertheless, I'm always at this rough exercise, which inspires me like a passion. Please, then, to try a fall with me, whereby you will do yourself good as well as me. Theodorus, I consent. Lead me whither you will, for I know that you are like destiny. No man can escape from any argument which you may weave for him. But I am not disposed to go further than you suggest. Socrates, once will be enough, and now take particular care that we do not again unwittingly expose ourselves to the reproach of talking childishly. Theodorus, I will do my best to avoid that error. Socrates, in the first place, let us return to our old objection and see whether we were right in blaming and taking offense at Protagoras on the ground that he assumed all to be equal and sufficient in wisdom. Although he admitted that there was a better and worse, and that in respect of this, some who, he said, were the wise excelled others. So I looked up, apparently this wisdom here is phronesis. And all men to be equal and sufficient in phronesis might be very different from in Sophia. Theodorus, very true. Socrates, had Protagoras been living and answered for himself, instead of our answering for him, there would have been no need of our reviewing and reinforcing the argument. But as he is not here, and someone may accuse us of speaking without authority on his behalf, had we not better come to a clearer agreement about his meaning? For a great deal may be at stake. True. Then let us obtain, not through any third person, but from his own statement, and in the fewest word possible, the basis of agreement. In what way? Socrates, in this way, his words are, what seems to a man is to him. Theodorus, yes, so he says. Socrates, and are not we, Protagoras, uttering the opinion of man, or rather of all mankind, when we say that everyone thinks himself wiser than other men in some things, and the inferior in others? In the hour of danger, when there are imperils of war or of the sea or of sickness, do they not look up to their commanders as if they were gods, and expect salvation from them only because they excel them in knowledge? Is not the world full of men in their several employments who are looking for teachers and rulers of themselves and of their animals? And there are plenty who think that they are able to teach and able to rule. Now, in all this is implied that ignorance and wisdom, here Sophia, exist amongst them, at least in their own opinion. Theodorus, certainly. And wisdom is assumed by them to be true thought, and ignorance to be false opinion. I forgot to look that up. Sophia. Aletheia, dianoia. Okay, Sophia. Exactly. Socrates. How then, Protagoras, would you have us treat the argument? Shall we say that the opinions of men are always true, or sometimes true and sometimes false? In either case, the result is the same, and their opinions are not always true, but sometimes true and sometimes false. For tell me, Theodorus, do you suppose that you yourself, or any other follower of Protagoras, would contend that no one deems another ignorant or mistaken in his opinion? Theodorus, the thing is incredible, Socrates. Socrates. And yet that absurdity is necessarily involved in the thesis that which declares man to be the measure of all things. Theodorus, how so? Socrates, why, suppose that you determine in your own mind something to be true, and declare your opinion to me. Let us assume, as he argues, that this is true to you. Now, if so, you must either say that the rest of us are not the judges of this opinion or judgment of yours, or that would judge you always to have a true opinion. But are there not thousands upon thousands who, whenever you form a judgment, take up arms against you, and are of an opposite judgment and opinion, deeming that you judge falsely? Theodorus: yes, indeed, Socrates, thousands and tens of thousands, as Homer says, who give me a world of trouble. Socrates: well, but are we to assert that what you think is true to you and false to the 10,000 others? Well, are we to assert that what you think is true to you and false to the 10,000 others? Theodorus: no other inference seems to be possible. Socrates: and how about Protagoras himself? If neither he nor the multitude thought, as indeed they do not think, that man is the measure of all things, must it not follow that the truth of which Protagoras wrote would be true to no one? But if you suppose that he himself thought this, and that the multitude does not agree with him, you must begin by allowing that in whatever proportion the many are more than one, in that proportion his truth is more untrue than true. Theodorus: that would follow if the truth is supposed to vary with individual opinion. Socrates: and the best of the joke is that he acknowledges the truth of their opinion, who believe his own opinion to be false. For he admits that the opinion of all men are true. Certainly. Thus far, our scripture of the evening. It occurred to me as I was reading that Socrates, Plato, also actually takes this theory of Protagoras very seriously. It appears in multiple dialogues. And he gives quite a lot of attention to it in this dialogue. So I am not alone in having written it on my wall because it spoke to me. I love the opening sentences. How valorous, how knightly discussions could be held, and how not debating for victory, but discussing for truly understanding can encourage men to embrace philosophy, while the other way would make them shy away from it. And also, do never claim to be a virtuous man or woman if you fight unfairly, be it in words or any other way. So let's just look at the phronesis, sofia idea, because Joe wrote about that. Phronesis. I'm gonna see if I can find what Joe wrote. Folly, sorry, I forgot. It is times like these that I consider, I hope this is not behind a paid wall, but I'm just gonna have a small quote. It is times like these that I consider the Aristotelian notion of phronesis, or practical wisdom, in the context of Aristotle's ethics. This, among other things, refers to the ability to figure out which virtues are best applied in each situation. It is knowing that a battlefield calls for more courage than an argument, which calls for more courage than a relaxing bath. That's where I got the idea for that. I really wish we still had this word, as I think it perfectly applies to this situation. Well, darling, we still do have this word, we just need to use it again. Phronesis. Practical wisdom, also known as prudence. the ability to govern oneself through practical reason, exercising caution, wisdom, and foresight to avoid unnecessary risks and long-term harm. Careful decision-making, self-discipline, often described as cautious wisdom. Phronesis is extraordinarily relative. Every situation calls for interpretation and application of knowledge and skills and what have you to that specific situation. So if we think of man as the measure of all things, in that he is the only true judge of what it would be like to act phroniciously, in his own life, that might be true. We hardly know ourselves, but we learn. And I like to believe there is something inside us that steers us on our path, as only we can walk that path. And in that sense, then, man is indeed the measure of all things and his own judge of truth, of what is true and what is good in his particular situation. When it comes to Sophia, of course, that is a different matter, because that's more cleverness is the translation which the online dictionary gives, which is Sophia is also a little bit theoretical knowledge, theoretical wisdom. And there, indeed, some people know more than others. So I would be curious to read Protagoras himself. Although saying man is the measure of all things is not saying that everyone is wise. In the Greek, but I don't have him. Oh, I could probably easily find him online. Man is the measure of all things. Remember, the meta question here in this dialogue is, what is knowledge? And if it's a knowing how, what phronesis is. Knowing how in this particular situation, so procedural and perspectival, even participatory knowing in one, then maybe every individual is the measure of that knowledge. Or maybe at least every individual should be the measure of that knowledge, because otherwise we just get copies of copies. And no one gets to fulfill their own fate. I don't know. I'm gonna go daydream now. I hope you have a lovely evening. And may the spirit of Sophia be with you.